We are living in uncertain times. In a season when it's easy to give in to fear, it's important we keep our eyes fixed on something other than our circumstances or the latest headlines. What we need in this time is perspective.
Hey friends and neighbors of Costa Mesa and Orange County. My name's Ben Applebee. I'm a pastor at a church called Watermark OC in Costa Mesa. And I'm here along with other community leaders just to give you a word of encouragement during this time of crisis, during this time of concern, anxiety, and fear. And the main big idea that I want to share with you today as you're watching is that any crisis can be turned into an opportunity. You know, in our biblical worldview as Christians, there's this famous verse from Romans 8, the author of the letter to the early Christians who knew all about crisis. They knew all about challenge and death and the traumas of their day. Paul said, the author of Romans said to this group of early Christians, he said, take hope, take courage, because God works all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. He works all things, everything for the good. And even right now, in the midst of chaos and trial and tribulation, that's a radical verse to suggest that we still believe in. Yet here it is, a stalwart, an anchor for our faith. And so I want that to be an encouragement for you, whether you're a believer or you're have questions about faith and you don't know what you believe. Certainly these times bring up to the surface all the questions of life: meaning, morality, life after death. What's the point of it all? Why do bad things happen? And so I just want to encourage you that in the biblical worldview, there's a huge faith statement that suggests God works all things for the good, even when it seems impossible, that there's no way he could do that. And there's a couple lessons. A friend sent me an article, as there's been so many pieces of media and news that maybe you've been sent. People have blown up your phone with emails, chain emails, and news articles and social media posts. And a friend sent this very encouraging article that was kind of rehearsing all the moments in church history. You know, the church, the Christian church, has had a lot of ups and downs in its 2,000 plus years of living and doing life and organizing themselves as a community. There have been many low points, many moments when it was not a point of pride to affiliate with the term Christian or with the term church. And yet even through thick and thin, even through tough trials and challenges where the church kind of lost itself, it lost its identity and its belief, there are bright spots where the church was beautiful, where the church turned crisis into opportunity. One of those moments in its earliest days, if you look all the way back to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century Rome, kind of in the area and even in the Middle East where the church was born, there was a policy in the Roman Empire where babies could be discarded. Even Plato and a lot of these early philosophers, they sponsored this idea that you could discard a child. You could leave them outside on the street and maybe someone would come and pick them up. And it was the early Christians who were so convinced by the biblical idea of adoption by God in Christ, that they took up actual literal biological adoption, and they were rescuing these kids as often as they could. They took care of the widow and the orphan and the sick in their midst. So much so that the Empire of Rome took a cue from their playbook. And around the 3rd century, they started to make changes even at the empire level. Rome was a huge example of how the church excelled. And every single age after that, there are bright spots. Look at even in the Catholic Church, Pope Innocent III. If it weren't for Pope Innocent III, we may not have modern city hospitals. The hospitals that you know, that we're running to in our time of need right now, were a result of faithful Christian men and women who saw a need in the city, and they met that need. They served the city in a powerful way. They turned crisis into opportunity to serve really well. Another one of my favorite examples that is powerful and challenging to me as a father of young children. Martin Luther, who is the father of Lutheranism. In his time, they faced an outbreak of plague. And Luther was not just a man of doctrine and theology and deep study, he was a man of action. He was so obsessed with serving people during this time of plague that he invited people into his home. His whole home was quarantined because he had welcomed so many sick people into his home. And one of the results of his action in that moment was the death of one of his children. His daughter Elizabeth passed during this time. And that was within the worldview of Luther that she or any one of his family members would die at their post. their serving position, to love the city through thick and thin. It's a biblical idea. It's a Christian idea. The church has to think of themselves less self-preservation for us, the church leaders. And I'm talking to you, if you're a church pastor or staff member, if you're a volunteer leader, if you're a layperson, you're just a member, you're a community member of a church, this is your time. This is your opportunity to join the ranks of Luther and the first century leaders, Pope Innocent III, and on down even into the late 1700s. Have you ever stopped to think about the origins of the altar call? This is a very popular practice inside churches where we preach a message and then we invite people to come up and make a decision for Christ, to invite Christ into their heart, as it were. Well, the origins of the altar call actually came from a guy named Charles Finney. What Charles Finney would do when he invited people up to accept Jesus, he would enroll them in a sign-up sheet for anti-slavery movements, for the abolishment of slavery. In every single trial and every single crisis of history, in all the crises of mankind, there have been bright spots where the church has stood up and turned crisis into opportunity. These are great lessons for us today, you guys. I was reading this article that a friend sent me just this morning, and I found myself getting so ticked off because someone cut me off in line. Maybe you experienced that in one of these more manic moments at the local grocery store. And I was so angry that someone cut me off. I had my schedule to keep, and yet I'm thinking about these people, these leaders and heroes of the faith, these leaders and heroes of the city, and how they put themselves second time and time and time again. They were committed not just to the church flourishing, but to the whole city flourishing. And that's our opportunity right now in this crisis. I want to give you three brief, specific things that you can consider an opportunity in this moment. The first one is time. As so many of our kids are being sent home and so many of our workers are being sent home, we have what we're calling at our church kind of a forced sabbatical, a forced Sabbath. And the word Sabbath is an old Jewish Christian term that just means stop, to cease, to breathe. I don't know about you, but I welcome that season right now because I didn't get that break previously in my hurry and anxiety and stress and pressure of everyday life. So take the gift of time and turn that into an opportunity to rest, to go outside, to enjoy space. If we have to embrace space, great, enjoy it. Delight in time and space. Another practical thing that I would encourage you in is gratitude. I don't know about you, but this always, when crisis strikes, it brings me amazing perspective of the things that I have taken for granted. I have a whole refreshed perspective of my health, of my family, of my friends, of how awesome and beautiful it was to meet together in a big group when those things have been temporarily postponed. I feel myself filled with gratitude. So embrace gratitude. Write a letter, send a text message to someone that you're so thankful for, and maybe you forgot to say thank you. Finally, consider acts of service. You can go to this website, stay on the I Heart Costa Mesa, I Love Costa Mesa website, and you can find ways to get involved. I know there's going to be blood drive opportunities. There's going to be ways to join our crisis response team. If you're able-bodied and you're ready, serve. And it won't just be the average amount of service. See, because during times of crisis, it's actually amplified. It means all the more because you were one of the willing few who got in the game and served when it was most difficult, when it was scariest. I'll leave you with this final picture as we talk about turning crisis into opportunity. Have you ever been out somewhere in public, maybe at a sports game or at the grocery stores or wherever, and there's something so remarkable and astounding that you stand up? It kind of makes you stand up and take notice at whatever it was you saw. And sometimes those things are kind of negative, but I believe this is our moment in history as a church, as a believing people. Even if you're an unbelieving person and you want to get in and serve, that people will stand up. It'll make people stand up as a result of your action because of a beautiful thing, not a negative or astounding thing, but a beautiful thing that you do, that you're a part of in this time in history. So we invite you to take time, and we invite you to rest. We invite you to be grateful for what it is that you have in this life, and we invite you to serve in a radical way because lives will be changed as a result of your action. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you for joining us for Perspective. We are a group of pastors and community leaders from Orange County who are pulling together to provide a fresh take on the crisis unfolding around us. We invite you to join us each morning for a new perspective on this ongoing pandemic.